My elder sister and I are twins. I was raised by my concubine mother, while she was registered under the principal wife. The principal wife was influential and doted on her, which made her spoiled and willful. The young marquis sought to marry me, but she took my place by impersonating me and stole my marriage. I was betrothed to a mere horse slave. Who would have thought that the horse slave would accumulate numerous military achievements, rise to the rank of general, and I would be granted a noble title? The young marquis was exceptionally cold and callous, divorcing my elder sister on the grounds of lewdness, making her the laughingstock of the capital. Reborn in this life, this time she says she wants to marry the horse slave. Unfortunately, she had no idea what a terrifying existence a horse slave could be. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Lady Huiyang came to propose marriage. Saying she was seeking the hand of the Yun girl from the Xie family for the young marquis, the head wife called my legitimate sister and me to the front hall and had us line up neatly. There are 2 Yun girls in the household, one legitimate and one illegitimate. I wonder which one you are referring to. Lady Huiyang stared at the 2 identical faces, completely dumbfounded. The next day she came again, this time explicitly stating that she wanted to marry the family's illegitimate daughter. As long as she's a good girl, what does it matter if she's illegitimate? After Lady Huiyang left, the matriarch stared at the 2 of us for a long while, then slapped the table and made her decision. You 2 look exactly the same. So later, Xu Yun will marry the young marquis. She frowned at me and lightly decided my fate. Your father once promised you to the Zhao family. Now, their son works as a stable hand at the horse farm. Ji Yun, you will marry him. But as soon as she finished speaking, my legitimate elder sister urgently spoke up. Mother, I am willing to marry young Master Zhao. The madam looked up in astonishment, her face full of disbelief. What did you say? She thought for a moment. Is it because you can't bear to part with your status as the legitimate daughter? It's all right. The Marquis family has already said they don't care about legitimacy or illegitimacy. In mother's heart, you will always be my daughter. The eldest sister shook her head with a sincere expression. The Marquis's family has taken a liking to my younger sister. How could I possibly steal her marriage? I will marry young Master Zhao. The matriarch was both shocked and doubtful. Everyone knew the eldest sister was spoiled and willful. How could such words come from her mouth? Xu Yun, the Zhao family's son, is a mere stable hand. If you marry him, you will suffer. My elder sister was very certain. He is bound to make a name for himself. She pleaded with the madam all night, and the madam had no choice but to agree to her request. My elder sister walked up to me and smiled. Then I congratulate you, little sister, on your high marriage. May you and your husband be in perfect harmony. She emphasized the last 4 words with great force. I knew she had also been reborn. After all, in her previous life, she had followed the first wife's arrangements without hesitation. Marrying the young marquis in my name, now she has gleefully chosen the horse-groom, unaware of the thorny path that lies ahead of her. Although my elder sister and I share the same mother, she was raised under the first wife's care since childhood. She always took advantage of her status as the legitimate daughter to torment me and my concubine mother, as if drawing a clear line between us would please the main wife. Before my concubine mother passed away from illness, she longed to see her one last time, but she never showed up. My father owed the Zhao family a favor. In my previous life, she looked down on Zhao Mingfang for being just a lowly horse servant, so she snatched my marriage arrangement and forced me to switch marriages with her. Later, Zhao Mingfang went to the battlefield and rose through the ranks from squad leader to general, steadily climbing the ladder of success, and as his wife, I appeared to enjoy boundless glory, but in reality, I was walking on thin ice. Zhao Mingfang had been stuck at the rank of Chiliarch for 2 years. Even though he later fought bravely and repeatedly achieved military successes, he never received a promotion. He grew anxious, and after receiving some advice, he thought of me. I was skilled at playing the piper. So when we returned to the capital for the holidays, he had me perform for the old general. He said, Ji Yun, help me, when I make something of myself in the future, you'll be able to enjoy the good life too. The old general always stared at me with undisguised intensity, and Zhao Mingfang never intervened, until one day, he found an excuse to get up and leave, leaving me alone in the room with the old general. Before leaving, the old general even promised him the position of commander of 10,000 men. However, after that night, the old general died suddenly. The court appointed a new general, who selected officials based on merit. And only then did Zhao Mingfang have his chance to rise. After being appointed as a general, he neither took concubines nor visited brothels. Rumors spread among the people that he and I were deeply devoted to each other. At every palace banquet, he would always bring me along, serving me food, ladling soup, and personally tasting it to check the temperature, making others envious. Every time, my legitimate elder sister would stare at me with venomous eyes. As if she wished she could devour me alive. I smiled bitterly to myself. Only I knew that he had another purpose for doing this. That was his secret, one that could cost us our lives. My legitimate elder sister and I were married on the same day. She left with the stable hand. While I was married into the Marquis household, the principal wife prepared a lavish dowry for my legitimate elder sister, while mine, in comparison, was quite meager. The principal wife also said, "Ji-yoon, remember, this marriage was given to you by your legitimate elder sister. In the future, you must remember Shu-yoon's kindness and support her as much as possible." My legitimate elder sister whispered in my ear, her smile carrying a hint of malice, "Little sister, you should be prepared. The young Marquis may appear warm-hearted, but he is cold inside. In the future, when you find yourself alone in an empty room, don't come home crying." In her previous life, after the young Marquis married her legitimate sister, he neglected her. Her sister came home crying, saying the young Marquis was impotent, unable to bear the loneliness. She seduced the young master who was temporarily staying at the Marquis's residence. Soon, the affair was exposed. She was divorced by the Marquis's household and her reputation was ruined. She pointed her index finger at the floral decoration on my forehead and said, "Considering we are sisters, when I am granted the title of a noble lady, I will allow you to carry my shoes." I only smiled without saying a word. Today, the two daughters of the Xie family were married on the same day, and the common people crowded around, leaving no room to pass. This Xie family is quite strange. The legitimate daughter is marrying a horse servant, while the illegitimate daughter is marrying a marquis. The legitimate daughter has a generous dowry but is riding in a shabby bridal sedan. The illegitimate daughter has a meager dowry but is welcomed with a grand bridal procession stretching for miles. My elder sister snorted coldly upon hearing this. What do they know? My blessings are yet to come. I was welcomed into the Marquis residence. Before the wedding, I had never met the young Marquis, so I truly didn't understand why the Marquis family had come to propose marriage. The Xie family's social status wasn't high, let alone the fact that I was merely a daughter born of a concubine. Outside, firecrackers roared as the young Marquis, drunk, was helped into the bridal chamber. He lifted my veil, revealing a face with red lips, pearly teeth, and bright, expressive eyes. He leaned in, staring at me, even though he was the one who had asked for my hand. There was no trace of joy on his face. Instead, he frowned with deep resentment. "Nice to see you again." He sat 3 steps away from me, deliberately keeping his distance. "Again, I don't understand," he sighed. "Never mind, you wouldn't understand anyway. In any case, what's done is done. If you behave yourself in the Marquis residence and don't get any foolish ideas, you can live a good life." He casually took off his wedding robes, didn't even drink the ceremonial wine with me, and hurriedly headed for the door. After taking a few steps, the young Marquis turned back and asked me, "Where is the horsegroom's family?" She is marrying the horsegroom today. I just wanted to take a look." From the sound of it, the young Marquis has my legitimate sister on his mind. I hesitated and asked, "Are you talking about my legitimate sister, Xie Shu-yoon?" The young Marquis snorted, hands on his hips, his tone laced with sarcasm. "You are Xie Shu-yoon, don't pretend. Don't think I don't know. You and your sister switched identities. The one who married the horsegroom is actually Xie Ji-yoon." I sat up straight and narrowed my eyes, sizing up the young Marquis. His eyes were bright, and he seemed exceptionally certain, as if he had experienced this before. "Could it be that he has also been reborn?" I patiently explained. "You've misunderstood, Marquis. I truly am Xie Ji-yoon. Truly, one does not give up until they see the Yellow River." The young Marquis's face was clearly written with the word disbelief. He asked me to lift my sleeve, palm facing upward. "Xie Ji-yoon has a small mole on her wrist, but Xie Shu-yoon does not. See, you don't have." His incessant chatter came to an abrupt halt the moment he spotted the small mole on my wrist. He stared at me in disbelief, then let out a cold laugh after a long pause. "You really went all out with the act, didn't you? So thorough in your preparations." As he spoke, he took a damp cloth and began scrubbing my wrist, but even after rubbing for a long time, until the skin turned red, the mole remained. The young Marquis blinked, then pulled out a brush and paper, asking me to write a few random characters. He held the rice paper carefully, examining the handwriting, and a wave of boundless joy slowly welled up in his eyes. "Xie Ji-yoon, it really is you. Then, young Marquis, are you still leaving, not leaving, not leaving, suddenly? The world before me darkened as the young Marquis covered my head with the bridal veil once more. I was puzzled, only to see him this time earnestly lift the veil with the wedding scale. That didn't count, let's do it again, he murmured softly, not a trace of the drunkenness from before remaining in his voice. The wine cup I thought would never be used was suddenly thrust into my hand. Holding another cup, he smiled at me. Agi, let us share the nuptial cup. The red candles in the room were burning brightly. I could hear his heart pounding like a drum and feel his overwhelming warmth. Who said the young Marquis is impotent? It's simply baseless nonsense. But looking at his bright smile, I suddenly felt a bit melancholy. In my previous life, I had seen the young Marquis at a palace banquet. At that time, his legs were already useless, his trouser legs hanging empty and limp as he sat dejectedly in a wheelchair, devoid of any spirit. When he saw me, his eyes seemed to brighten for a moment, but in the end, they faded back into stillness. He said, "Mrs. Zhao, how are you? How could such a spirited and bright person end up with both legs completely disabled? At least in this life, he should be safe." I originally thought the young Marquis was also reborn, but he wasn't at all. Yesterday, someone sent a letter to the Marquis's residence, saying that the second daughter of the Xie family was changing her marriage. The gatekeeper only gave me the letter this morning. I was greatly shocked and looked at him as if he were a fool. "And you believed it?" The young Marquis felt a bit aggrieved and muttered. I was half convinced and half doubting at first, so I immediately sent someone to the Xie residence to inquire. But it wasn't until after I married you that the servant I sent to investigate came back and told me it was indeed true. I thought that since Lady Xie had always treated you harshly, this was exactly the kind of thing she would do, so I believed it. He glanced at me, tugged at my sleeve, and cautiously apologized. I was so foolish to believe in that rumor. Agi, please forgive me. I slightly furrowed my brows, not to mention that the information the servant gathered was outdated. But who would send such a letter to the Marquis residence for no reason? Even if they did send it, why specifically provide false information? Soon, I learned the answer. 3 days later, the young Marquis accompanied me back to my parents' home, and along with us came my legitimate elder sister and Zhao Mingfang. Zhao Mingfang's face was cold and stern, his clothes were washed until they turned white, and there were thick calluses on the webbing between his thumb and index finger. I had unintentionally glanced at him, but he immediately turned his head to look at me, his gaze firmly fixed on me. What bad luck! Who would want to make eye contact with him? I quickly averted my gaze. While my father was having tea with his 2 sons-in-law, and the first wife and my legitimate sister were chatting together, I went alone to the backyard garden to rest. But not long after I arrived, Zhao Mingfang strode over and stopped right in front of me. He looked down at me, his voice hoarse as he spoke. "Zhiyun." A chill ran down my spine, and I took several steps back in succession. Zhao Mingfang's gaze was heavy as it enveloped me, his tone sorrowful. "Why has it changed? The person you were supposed to marry was clearly me. How could it have turned into someone else?" It turned out that it wasn't the young Marquis who had been reborn, but Zhao Mingfang. The moment I opened my eyes, I went to the Xie residence to inquire about the marriage, thinking I would treat you well this time. After learning that the marriage hadn't been changed this time, I immediately sent false information to the Marquis estate. I originally intended to deceive the young Marquis into switching bridal sedans with me on the wedding day, but he didn't. He reached out his hand to me, his gaze tender and lingering, as if I were his beloved. "Zhiyun, don't be with that cripple, run away with me." "Is he crazy? Who wants to run away with him?" As if thinking of something, he added, "Don't worry, Zhiyun. I haven't consummated the marriage with her." Before I could even speak, my legitimate elder sister's sharp voice cut through the air. "Xie Zhiyun, you have no shame. How dare you seduce my husband?" She rushed over and positioned herself between Zhao Mingfang and me, eyeing me warily. "Don't think you can set your sights on my husband just because the young Marquis has been neglecting you." The young Marquis stood right behind her and chuckled softly upon hearing her words. The wind picked up just then, and he took off his coat to drape it over me. As he tied the thin ribbons of the cloak, he replied to my elder sister without even turning his head, "She has already tasted fine grains. How could she possibly stomach coarse food like you?" My elder sister's expression shifted. She had dressed meticulously today, but the thick layer of powder couldn't conceal the dark circles beneath her eyes. The young Marquis held my hand and said proudly, "Open your eyes wide and see clearly. My wife and I are deeply in love." My legitimate sister's shocked gaze fell on our tightly clasped hands. "How is this possible?" she murmured to herself. The young Marquis seemed still unsatisfied and glanced at Zhao Mingfang again. "And you, stop coveting someone else's wife." After speaking, he took my hand and said gently, "Darling, let's go home." Zhao Mingfang remained silent. He was a man who knew how to assess the situation. And now that his status was far inferior to the young Marquis, he naturally dared not speak out in defiance, but as I passed by him, he lowered his voice and said in a volume only we could hear, "Zhiyun, what's so good about a cripple? I will make you come back to me sooner or later," word by word. It could be described as being said through gritted teeth. I pretended not to hear. As soon as he boarded the carriage, the young Marquis drew the curtains, blocking the scorching gazes from outside the window. "Aji, the way he looks at you is really off. Could it be that he likes you too? You should keep your distance from him from now on." Like me, I shook my head. In my previous life, on our wedding night, Zhao Mingfang did not touch me either. Rumors in the streets say he dotes on me endlessly, but all of that is false. At first, he coaxed me, saying, "I've heard that women feel pain during intercourse, and I can't bear to see you in pain." I am not a fool. I know well that he has no affection for me, and these words are merely an excuse, so I am content to enjoy my peace. Later, I caught him several times staring blankly at a silk handkerchief embroidered with reeds. Once, I caught him with flushed cheeks, eyes closed, pleasuring himself, with this handkerchief lying right beside him. Every time he left the capital for battle, he would always gaze eastward with deep affection in his eyes. At that time, I still didn't know who he was trying to see through the layers of pavilions and towers. I also didn't understand why he would marry me when he already had a woman he loved. It was only later that I realized it wasn't that he didn't want to marry her, it was that he couldn't. But by the time I realized it, it was too late. Surrounded on all sides, Zhao Mingfang had made his own mistakes and dragged me down with him. At the same time, my legitimate sister had just been divorced. The Xie family found her an embarrassment and refused to let her return home. She lived alone outside, and one day sent someone to deliver a message, saying she had something related to my birth mother that she wanted to tell me. In a moment of foolishness, I agreed to meet her. As a result, she closed the door and hysterically questioned me. "Why do you have such a good life? I am the legitimate daughter raised under the first wife's name, excelling in every way since childhood. Now you and your husband are deeply in love, while I have been miserably cast aside, living in such wretchedness. It's not fair, it's just not fair." In her agitation, she knocked over the candlestick. She had already smeared oil all around, trapping me with the intention of dying together, and we were both burned alive. But she didn't know that even if she hadn't killed me, I would have died in a few days anyway. All because I am Zhao Mingfang's wife. I cannot escape this identity. I tugged on the young Marquis's sleeve and tentatively asked, "Can you teach me martial arts?" The entire capital knows that the young master of the Marquis of Dingwa is the one with the worst academic performance in the Imperial College. His handwriting is as messy as a dog's scratch, and even after staring at his essay for a long time, the teacher couldn't make any sense of it. But the whole capital also knows that the young master excels in horsemanship and archery, is skilled with both the sword and the blade, and possesses an extraordinary talent in martial arts. Had his legs not been broken in his previous life, he would have achieved great accomplishments. Hearing my words, the young Marquis was quite surprised. "Martial arts? Why does Aji suddenly want to learn martial arts?" "For self-protection. If I knew martial arts, I wouldn't have been trapped and nearly burned to death in the fire by my legitimate sister, and to protect others." The young Marquis tilted his head and thought for a moment. "I've never seen a noble lady practice martial arts before." I was afraid he would refuse and was about to argue my case, but he smiled with his eyes crinkling. "But I think it's wonderful. If you want to learn, I'll teach you." I began practicing martial arts with the young Marquis. My mother-in-law did not object. Instead, she watched us practice horse stance with a gentle smile. "This is good. Zhiyun training with you can also help build her strength." Later, an imperial decree arrived from the palace, ordering the Marquis of Dingwa and the young Marquis to go south together to suppress the bandits, and to set off that very day. It was said that the bandits in Lingnan were on the rampage, looting and plundering everywhere, causing the people to suffer greatly. The young Marquis hastily packed his belongings, kissing me again and again. "Aji, wait for me to come home." I remembered that in my previous life, it was this very suppression of the bandits in Lingnan that cost the young Marquis his legs and claimed the life of the Marquis of Dingwa. Feeling uneasy, I grabbed his sleeve and spoke urgently. "I've had the same dream over and over, that you lost both your legs while suppressing the rebellion. When you're in Lingnan, you must be careful and stay vigilant around those close to you. As for the campaign against the bandits in Lingnan, I only knew that it ended in a great victory. The details were unclear to me. The young Marquis was momentarily stunned upon hearing this, then he held me tightly and said, "I understand. I will return safe and sound." After he left, my heart remained unsettled, and my mother-in-law was also anxious all day long. Finally, I couldn't help but say, "Mother, I wish to journey to Lingnan." My mother-in-law remained silent for a moment before asking, "The journey is perilous. Have you thought it through?" I replied firmly, "Yes." Instead of dissuading me, she summoned the steward, had him retrieve some land deeds and property titles, instructed him to exchange them all for soft armor and protective gear, and selected a group of elite household guards to accompany me. "Jiyun, deliver the soft armor and protective gear. Keep an eye on that father and son pair for me, make sure they remain safe and sound, and you yourself must also take good care." Our group traveled swiftly, reaching the Lingnan region in less than 20 days. "We're staying overnight in a village, and if we pick up the pace tomorrow, we should be able to meet up with the young Marquis." The villagers were very warm-hearted. Sister-in-law Kui stir-fried a plate of garlic sprouts for me and also brought out some pickled radish cubes for me to eat. She was a widow who had raised her son all by herself. Her son had such a sweet mouth, even with his face smeared with grease from eating, he still managed to spare a moment to compliment me on my looks. In the middle of the night, the peaceful village suddenly erupted with noise. I lifted the curtain and saw that bandits were attacking, judging by the raised torches. The number of bandits was likely small, but the village was mostly filled with the elderly, weak, women, and children, hardly any resistance to speak of. I immediately notified the garrison troops to mobilize and eliminate this wave of bandits with full force. An hour later, everything returned to quiet. The village chief was counting the people, and 4 were missing from the village. I looked around and asked, "Why don't I see Sister Kui?" The village chief walked over, trembling, and sighed. Her son went out to relieve himself at night and was the first to encounter the bandits. They took him away. Sister Kui tried to get her child back, but the bandits, seeing how beautiful she was, said she had to exchange herself for him. Several men gathered around and began to act recklessly. Her son tried to save her, but a bandit kicked him away. His head hit a rock, he called out "Mother," and then fell silent. Seeing this, Sister Kui struggled with all her might. And then she too was gone. The village chief hung his head and pointed ahead. "She died right over there. I'll find some women to help with the burial later." I staggered slightly and followed the direction he pointed, going to see Sister Kui and her son one last time. Aunt Kui's clothes were torn open, her hair disheveled, her eyes still wide open, staring at her son. The little one, who had been lively and active just hours before, now lay quietly, never to speak to me again. I closed Aunt Kui's eyes for her. This was my first time facing the onslaught of bandits, and the first time I deeply understood the significance of peace and stability for the common people. That night, I also encountered the young Marquis. They had heard there were bandits in these mountains and rushed over, never expecting to reunite with me. The candlelight illuminated the young Marquis's face. With blood still fresh on his clothes, he asked me in a trembling voice, "Aji, how could you come all this way on such a dangerous road?" The young Marquis had grown a bit darker and thinner, yet he carried himself with more masculine charm. I pointed to the equipment behind me. "I came to bring you these things." The route for suppressing the bandits in Lingnan was entirely entrusted to the young Marquis by the Marquis of Dingwa for planning. The young Marquis displayed his astonishing military talent for the first time, leading the troops smoothly all the way. In less than 2 months, he captured the bandit leader and quelled the turmoil. Even the supervising eunuch repeatedly praised him for being accomplished at such a young age. In this life, the incident of losing both legs did not occur. The young Marquis said, "Dreams are the opposite of reality." He added, "Perhaps it is because Aji is by my side, shielding me from misfortune. The army has already returned, and all is well. It truly seems different from the previous life." While passing through Minua, the Marquis of Dingwa said that since we were here, we had to go home and take a look. The young Marquis told me that the Han family's ancestral home was here, and the Marquis of Dingwa had also grown up in this place during his childhood. The Marquis of Dingwa pointed at this old, dilapidated house and said with a smile, "Over a decade ago, when His Majesty traveled south of the Yangtze River, he even made a detour to visit this house. Inside the house, there was an old rocking cradle, and the bamboo dragonfly at the head of the bed had long since withered." The young Marquis gently rocked the small bed, murmuring to me, "Aji, I slept in this bed once when I was a child." This ancestral home held warm memories for both him and his father, but it was at this very moment that the unexpected happened. People emerged from all directions, surrounding us completely. Those men, uniformly dressed in black and masked, with long swords at their waists, exuded a murderous aura. Clearly having come prepared, the Marquis of Dingwa had returned to his ancestral home, so naturally, he hadn't brought his army, nor was there any need for him to wear armor. The men in black had clearly anticipated this. They showed no fear, and at their leader's command, they shouted, "Kill!" I finally understand how the Marquis and his son met their tragic fate in my previous life. The Marquis of Dingwa died after quelling the bandit rebellion. Right in front of his ancestral home, Xiaohu bot document anti-piracy. Choose Xiaohu for finding books, stable and reliable, no pitfalls. The young Marquis managed to escape with his life, but the man who should have been galloping through the streets could never stand again. But this time, it won't happen that way. The men in black suddenly grew restless. They discovered that the Marquis's guards had surrounded them from the outside. The Marquis of Dingwa held his blade at the ready, coldly scanning the surroundings. The young Marquis had initially shielded me behind him, but then suddenly remembered and laughed, saying, "I forgot our Aji is also skilled in martial arts, then please fight alongside me." I have always been troubled by the matter of the young Marquis's legs being crippled. Upon learning that the Marquis of Dingwa was returning to his ancestral home, I suggested that he bring his household guards along, equipped with weapons and soft armor, just in case. The Marquis of Dingwa felt that it was just a trip back to the ancestral home and nothing would happen, but he still listened to my advice. "Very well, if your mother-in-law were here, she would likely be just as cautious, then let's do as you wish." After a chaotic struggle, the young Marquis captured the leader and roughly tore off his face covering. "Let me see who you are." At the sight, he was slightly taken aback. The face was ordinary, with a scar running from the left eye down to the chin. "This is the bandit leader that the young Marquis captured alive some time ago. He was imprisoned and should have been sent to the capital by now. These troublemakers in black have been subdued by the government soldiers. When their masks were removed, they turned out to be bandits. Some were imprisoned, while others promised to turn over a new leaf." The young Marquis and the Marquis of Dingwa exchanged a glance. Already having a rough idea of what was going on, the overseer of the bandits was the military supervisor, who was the emperor's man. The location of the Marquis of Dingwa's ancestral home was also known to the emperor. Even so, the Marquis of Dingwa still pressed his blade against the scarred leader's neck, demanding that he tell the truth. Spare me, I'll talk." Someone asked if I wanted revenge, and I said yes. He then released me and gave me a map with a marked spot on your house. He told me to gather my men, provided us with clothes and weapons, and instructed us to kill you all. If that wasn't possible, he said to at least make sure you lost an arm or a leg. He even promised to make me the mountain bandit king in the future. But I really don't know who that person is. He was completely covered up. Though his voice sounded familiar, Lord Dingwa listened, gave a bitter smile, and with a swing of his blade, slit the man's throat. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had seen the harm bandits could do. They burned, killed, looted, committed all manner of crimes, utterly devoid of humanity. Aunt Qui's clothes were pushed up to her chest, and there were disgusting red marks all over her body. But now, the emperor has ordered the bandits to be released, allowing them to continue their plundering. The banditry that had just been quelled is about to resurface. Who knows how many more women like Sister Qui will suffer? And how many more villages will vanish overnight? And all of this, just to eliminate the meritorious Han father and son. Those in power should be the ones to establish moral principles for the world and secure the livelihoods of the people. How can they, for their own selfish desires, push the common folk into such dire suffering? The young Marquis gently ruffled my hair. "Why the sudden tears? Are you scared?" I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. "I don't want to see another bandit uprising." The young Marquis, being carefree, burst out laughing. "Don't worry, I won't let these ruffians escape." Upon returning from Lingnan, the Marquis of Dingwa was suddenly gravely wounded, and the young Marquis was confined to his sickbed. Of course, these were all lies, told to the emperor. The Marquis of Dingwa's estate was too prominent. The old Marquis held military power. The young Marquis was exceptionally skilled in martial arts. The current empress hailed from the Marquis's estate. And the crown prince was even the young Marquis's cousin. The Marquis's estate needed to bide its time. Good news also frequently arrived from the front lines of the battlefield. Zhao Mingfang's promotion was several times faster than in his previous life. He wasn't stuck in the position of battalion commander for 2 years, smoothly advancing to become a regiment commander and then a general. I heard he had already brought his legitimate sister to the borderlands earlier. There were also rumors in the capital that he and his legitimate sister were deeply in love and couldn't bear to be apart, but I always felt that there might be more unsavory reasons behind his rapid promotion this time. After a great victory on the frontier, he returned to the capital with my legitimate elder sister. It was Qingming Festival, and I returned to the Xie family with the young Marquis to pay respects to our ancestors. Now, father's attitude towards Zhao Mingfang was far too polite. And madam grew fonder of him with each glance, praising repeatedly, Shuyun has good taste, Mingfang is truly promising. My legitimate elder sister, hearing this, was startled, then asked me, is the young Marquis feeling better? The young Marquis has been feigning illness lately. To make it more convincing, the manor has been brewing medicine daily, and now he carries a faint scent of herbs. I shook my head, I've taken a lot of medicine, but I'm still not getting better. My elder sister looked at me meaningfully, then finally broke into a smile and whispered, Jiyun, look, this time I'm doing better than you. My suffering has finally come to an end. The old butler of the mansion brought us some fruits. When he handed them to my elder sister, she suddenly cried out, don't touch me. The butler was startled. He might have accidentally brushed against her sleeve, never expecting such a strong reaction from her. My elder sister quickly regained her composure. Her expression shifting slightly, the matriarch gently held her hand and sighed, the borderlands are truly harsh. How have you grown so thin? When she got married, my legitimate sister had a face as radiant as peaches and plums. Now, just a few years later, her jade-like complexion has turned sallow, and she looks much more haggard. Hearing this, my legitimate sister instinctively glanced at Zhao Mingfang, then quickly averted her gaze. I now have a rough idea of the kind of life she has been living on the frontier. In my previous life, Zhao Mingfang, in order to get a promotion, deliberately wanted me to serve the old general. That night, the old general pressed forward, and with no room to retreat, I had no choice but to take him by surprise and drive the golden hairpin into his throat. The old general was about the same age as the steward of the Xie residence. My elder sister was skilled in dance and was taken directly to the frontier by Zhao Mingfang. Considering Zhao Mingfang's rapid promotion now, it's not hard to imagine what she must have gone through. My elder sister straightened her clothes and lifted her chin high. I'll recover after some rest. I am now the general's wife. During the worship ceremony, Zhao Mingfang's aggressive gaze fell upon me. Even though my legitimate elder sister was right beside me, he didn't bother to conceal it in the slightest. And why would he? He had been promoted by the old general himself, only to later report the old general for dereliction of duty and take his position. Now his official rank surpassed my father's, and he had transformed from a mere stable hand into a rising star at court. He seemed to have 1,000 words he wanted to say, momentarily unsure where to begin. Finally, he glanced at the young Marquis in the distance and remarked, he may have escaped being a cripple, but he won't escape being a medicine pot. I just like sickly people. He shook his head with a smile. Jiyun, stop being stubborn, come back to me. I'll let you have the position of general's wife. Ha, who wants such a hot potato? In your dreams, Zhao Mingfang shrugged, ignoring his legitimate sister's pale face. Then I'll just have to try harder to bring down the Marquis's household and take you back by force. I ignored him and patted my elder sister's shoulder. Xie Shuyun, see clearly, it was him who had ill intentions toward me, and I couldn't avoid him fast enough. Don't turn around later and accuse me of stealing your husband. What do you mean by after suffering comes sweetness? Following someone like Zhao Mingfang, who offers his wife to gain favor. You can see nothing but suffering for the rest of your life, and he wants to bring down the Marquis's estate. Is he even worthy? The young Marquis held my hand and walked me home. Before we parted, I glanced back at my legitimate sister. She gazed at our retreating figures, walking side by side, lost in thought. Then, she let out a low laugh. Reading her lips, she was saying, she's nothing but a medicine pot. She's not living as well as I am, not as well as I am. Zhao Mingfang did not take the Marquis's household seriously because he was already standing on the opposite side of the Marquis's household. The emperor favored the imperial consort, who had given birth to a son, now only 3 years old. The crown prince, born of the empress, had already reached the age of 20 and was of pure and kind nature, possessing the talent to govern the world. The emperor's health was deteriorating, and under the imperial consort's pillow talk, he began to distrust the crown prince and even considered changing the heir. The empress has the support of the Dingwa Marquis's household, while the imperial consort comes from a humble background and lacks such backing. In my previous life, as a titled lady entering the palace to pay respects to the empress, I once encountered the imperial consort by chance. She was stunningly beautiful. but when her crimson lips parted, the words that came out were meant to challenge me. "Is this General Zhao's wife? How could you be so unruly as to offend me?" As she spoke, she gently tossed the marten in her hand forward. "You've frightened all of my cats away. In that case, I sentence you to kneel in front of the gate of eternal life for 3 hours." After returning, Zhao Mingfang noticed my strange walking posture and casually asked about it. Upon learning the reason, he lowered his head. He didn't ask me if it hurt, but instead kept twisting the handcurder in his hands over and over. Zhao Mingfang resolutely chose to support the sixth prince, born of the imperial concubine. I felt deeply uneasy about it, but he dismissed me with a sneer. "You, a mere woman, do not understand court politics. Do not speak presumptuously." However, during the spring hunt at the imperial lodge, in the deep darkness of night, I stumbled upon his secret. He and the imperial concubine were locked in a tight embrace. Entwined like water snakes, utterly lost in their passion, the imperial concubine's given name was Rudi. Rudi. Wasn't that the very reed embroidered on the handkerchief? He had backed the wrong side and was having an affair with the emperor's favorite concubine. Yet, I was his wife. He wouldn't divorce me, nor would he cast me aside, binding me to him on the same sinking ship. From that moment on, I knew that sooner or later, he would be the death of me. After my legitimate elder sister and I perished together, I did not immediately reincarnate. My spirit drifted in the air, and I saw him having a secret meeting with the imperial consort when the emperor caught them. The two of them tried hard to deny any involvement, but the emperor ordered a thorough investigation, which revealed that they had been involved in an illicit affair even before the imperial consort entered the palace. At first, Zhao Mingfang took the blame upon himself. But the imperial consort, fearing trouble, cried out that Zhao Mingfang had forced her, insisting that her heart belonged only to the emperor. Zhao Mingfang couldn't bear to listen any longer and confronted the imperial consort. "Didn't you say you loved only me?" The imperial consort, consumed with anxiety, lashed out without thinking. "I love only His Majesty. How could someone of your lowly stablehand origins ever be worthy of my love?" Zhao Mingfang was stunned. Clutching the silk handkerchief in his sleeve tightly before letting it go in despair, his fervent and passionate feelings of many years were also worn smooth by these words. Since he couldn't escape death anyway, he dragged the imperial concubine down with him, and even revealed everything about her, wanting him to side with the sixth prince. In the end, the emperor ordered the imperial concubine to be put to death and decreed the execution of Zhao Mingfang's entire family. To conceal the royal family's shame, all palace staff aware of the matter were to be executed without exception. This emperor was truly not an enlightened ruler, much less a benevolent one. All the events of his previous life had completely alienated Zhao Mingfang from the imperial concubine. Perhaps it was the absence of the imperial concubine that finally made him remember my good qualities, leading him to dwell on me so much in this life. "Madam, the young marquis asked me to inform you that General Zhao has indeed met with that person." The report came from below just as I was taking stock of this year's harvest at the estate. After my mother-in-law had me study estate management for a period, she handed over the tally tokens to me, leaving everything under my full authority. My guess was correct. Zhao Mingfang has chosen the sixth prince again in this lifetime. In his opinion, the decline of the Dingwa marquisate was set. And the crown prince was half a member of the marquisate, so he would certainly not choose him. Looking around, only the sixth prince could contend with the crown prince due to his favor. Furthermore, the sixth prince was still young. If he ascended the throne, Zhao Mingfang could become the regent. Unfortunately, this time his cooperation with the imperial concubine was based on mutual benefit. With no love left, making it harder to break than in his previous life, I returned a portion of the harvest to the tenant farmers, gave 3/10 to the charity, and kept another 3/10 to exchange for thick winter clothes and trousers, which I sent to the border and the outskirts of the capital. Marquis Dingwa said that soldiers guarding the border had a hard life, and the bitter cold of the northern frontier made winter the most dreaded season. A few cotton clothes would make things a little easier for them. The young marquis and I went to the outskirts of the capital together. The soldiers from the capital were personally led by the Marquis of Dingwa. The emperor, uneasy, forbade them from guarding the border and denied them armor and weapons. The weather was still cold, and they wore coarse cloth tunics, all patched in several places. We brought not only clothes but also the iron armor and weapons prepared for the bandit suppression in Lingnan. Inside the tent, the commanding officer spoke with us in detail. Before leaving, he looked at the young marquis and smiled. He's truly the spitting image of the marquis. The Marquis of Dingwa has an heir. Zhao Mingfang was a newly favored official. The emperor praised him repeatedly, promoted him exceptionally, and elevated him to a high position. We knew in our hearts that the emperor wanted to cultivate a minister who could contend with the Marquis of Dinggua's estate and yet be controlled by him. As a result, my legitimate sister also frequently entered the palace. I caught sight of her at the palace banquet. Every time she saw a man around the same age as the old general, she would become extremely nervous. Today, when she saw the chief eunuch in the palace, it was the same. The old eunuch chuckled, "I don't harm anyone." "What is madam afraid of?" My elder sister awkwardly dismissed the old eunuch. She wore elaborate and splendid clothes, her head adorned with pearls and jade hairpins, staring blankly ahead, her expression forlorn. She had never been like this before, even though she was neglected by the young marquis in her previous life. She was still full of energy and even had the mind to seduce the young master of the marquis's family. But now, she was like a porcelain doll that had been shattered in half. I suddenly remembered something from my childhood. At that time, my elder sister had not yet been adopted by the main wife, and we grew up together with our concubine mother. I used to call her Ajia. I craved furong cakes, but they were only ever sent to the first madam's chambers. My legitimate sister ran to the kitchen, begging the chef to teach her how to make furong cakes. The little girl stood on a stool, rolling up her sleeves and mimicking the adults as she made pastries. Her hands covered in flour. Once they were done, she delightedly brought them to me. "Sister, quickly try some." I still remember the taste of that piece of hibiscus cake. It was absolutely awful. I took one bite and refused to eat any more. She complained a little, then tried a bite herself, and without another word, threw it all away. Back then, we struggled to survive together in the Marquis's estate, dressed identically. She would chase butterflies with me, and I would tell her stories. We were each other's best playmates, and the keepers of each other's secrets. It wasn't until the first madam adopted her that everything changed. At this moment, several noble ladies spotted her and quickly came forward, surrounding her in the center. "Madam Zhao looks truly beautiful today. This bracelet is of excellent quality. It suits you very well." A few words pulled her thoughts back. She twirled the jade bracelet on her wrist, slightly raised her chin, and became that proud peacock once more. "Is that so?" The emperor bestowed many rewards upon the general, and he gave them all to me. As she spoke, she glanced at me, slowly lifting her head. From afar, I waved to her and then turned to leave. At today's palace banquet, the emperor did not attend due to his poor health. His health is deteriorating day by day. In his previous life, he still had the energy to go on the spring hunt at this time. But now he needs assistance even to get out of bed and walk. This is certainly the empress's doing. Not long after, the emperor fell seriously ill and only allowed the imperial consort to attend to him. The sixth prince paid his respects to the emperor daily, while the crown prince was not even permitted to enter the bedchamber. The emperor summoned several ministers and also called for Zhao Mingfang. The young marquis whispered to me. My aunt sent word that she faintly overheard the emperor saying something about maternal relatives interfering in state affairs and shaking the foundation of the nation. He was practicing calligraphy with me, writing while casually saying, "I suppose an imperial edict to depose the crown prince is imminent." On the rice paper, a character was faintly discernible, "Guard." Before the emperor could depose the crown prince, he himself fell into a coma first. The empress attended to the emperor in the inner palace, while the crown prince oversaw state affairs. To allow the emperor to rest and recuperate in peace, the empress strictly controlled access to the Chaoming palace. The noble consort and the sixth prince were completely unable to see the emperor again. The young marquis's handwriting has improved somewhat recently. After finishing a copybook, he said without looking up, "Aji, it seems Zhao Mingfang is getting anxious." Before the emperor fell into a coma, he entrusted the imperial guard to him. He still holds military power and is said to be preparing to lead his men into the palace under the pretext of protecting the sovereign. I stopped grinding the ink and saw him beckoning to me. "Come, my lady, let us go to the palace together and bring this play to its conclusion." Zhao Mingfang led his troops into the imperial palace, and with the assistance of the imperial guards, they encountered almost no resistance. Just as he triumphantly charged through the second gate, his advance suddenly came to a halt. The empress and I were waiting for him, while the imperial consort and the sixth prince were being restrained by the palace attendants. "Mingfang, save us!" The imperial consort, seeing it was him, urgently cried out. Zhao Mingfang glanced at her, then looked at me. "Zhiyun, you don't actually think you can trap me with these two, do you?" He shook his head repeatedly as if hearing a joke. "It's useless. I stopped caring about her long ago. As for him, He pointed at the sixth prince. It doesn't matter either. Without the sixth prince, there are still the fourth and fifth princes waiting for me. The rising sun stretched his shadow long, and Zhao Mingfang squinted his eyes, already dreaming of becoming the regent. Zhiyun, step aside, don't get hurt. Then, raising his right hand, he declared loudly, "The emperor is trapped in the Chaoming Palace. All troops, follow me to rescue his majesty." But they could go no further. The severely wounded Marquis of Dinghua and the long-ill young Marquis led the soldiers of the capital camp to outflank them from the rear. These soldiers were battle-hardened veterans who had fought on the battlefield, not only greater in number but also better equipped with weapons. Zhao Mingfang was stunned. This was completely unexpected. In a real fight, the men he had brought were no match at all. And their disadvantage became apparent before long. Under the persuasion of the Marquis, they gave up their resistance and dropped their weapons one after another. At the same time, the crown prince arrived and announced that the emperor in the Chaoming Palace had passed away. With a clang, Zhao Mingfang's long sword fell to the ground. At this moment, whether it was him or the imperial consort, their defeat was already sealed. Zhao Mingfang was found guilty of conspiring to rebel and was immediately imprisoned, with his execution scheduled for a later date. When the young Marquis and I arrived at the Zhao residence, my legitimate elder sister stood in thin clothing, her hair unkempt, staring at me with vacant eyes. She asked me, "Zhao Mingfang lost, didn't he?" I told him to remain content as a general and not get involved in the crown prince's power struggle, but he wouldn't listen to me. Fearing I might leak information, he even confined me to the estate. I nodded. "Yes, he lost and is dying. Then I'm no longer the general's wife." She suddenly ran towards me, shaking me as she asked, "Xie Zhiyun, why is my life so miserable again?" This startled the young Marquis greatly. "Be careful. My wife is with child." Upon hearing this, my elder sister was slightly taken aback. "With child? Whose child?" The young Marquis was furious. "Of course my wife is carrying my child." "But aren't you impotent?" The young Marquis was so angry he almost laughed. "Are you insane or just sick? How dare you falsely accuse me for no reason?" The legitimate elder sister fell silent for a long moment before finally reacting. She grabbed the young Marquis's collar like a madwoman. Why did you deceive me? We could have been a loving couple. Why did you make me suffer so much?" The young Marquis was utterly baffled, stepping back several paces in succession. "Are you out of your mind? Who deceived you? Who said we were husband and wife? I don't even like you." My elder sister was already in tears. "Then why don't you like me? I look exactly like Xie Zhiyun, but your personalities are different." It was through my sister's question that I finally learned the reason why the young Marquis had been so determined to marry the Xie family's illegitimate daughter. In his youth, the young Marquis disliked going to the imperial college and often played truant. One day, he climbed onto the top of a wall, right above the Nanya Academy. At that moment, the teacher was having the students take turns sharing their hopes for the future. Bored out of his mind, the young Marquis decided to eavesdrop. He grew increasingly bored as he listened, and just as he was about to doze off, he heard a girl say, "Lifting my eyes, I behold the vastness of the universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars are mine to climb." Suddenly intrigued, he turned his gaze toward the girl. As she spoke, she slightly raised her wrist, revealing a small mole. When the students were dismissed, he ran to ask the teacher, "Who was the girl who spoke those words just now?" "You mean her, Xie Jiayun." The teacher recognized the young Marquis and smiled at him. "She is the top student in our academy. This stack of papers are all essays written by her. Take a good look at them." The young Marquis took the stack of essays back and went through them. "Her handwriting is truly beautiful. I used to hate those square characters the most, but reading her essays, I can actually calm my mind. Perhaps the less one has, the more one pursues it. I am a man lacking in literary talent. But when I met such a girl, I couldn't help wanting to get close. So I climbed over the wall again and sneaked into Nanya Academy just to catch a glimpse of her. I knew she loved reading, enjoyed pastries, had a dimple on her right cheek when she smiled, and had a twin sister who looked exactly like her. Later, when my mother asked if I had a girl I fancied, as if possessed, I blurted out the 4 words, "Xie families are yun." The young Marquis recalled the past, his eyes brimming with a smile. But when he saw his legitimate sister, his expression darkened again. "So how could I possibly like you? Don't even think about it." My elder sister leaned against the wall, laughing uncontrollably as she wiped away tears. "So that's how it is. My name was never in this story from the very beginning." She turned to ask me, "Xie Zhiyun, now that Zhao Mingfang is in trouble, does that mean I'm going to die too?" I asked the young Marquis to step out first. then stood with my hands behind my back looking at her. So, do you still want to perish together with me? She staggered, unable to believe it. So you've been reborn too? Since you know that the young Marquis became a cripple in your past life, why are you still willing to marry him? I stood firmly before her and said seriously, because no matter who I marry, I will strive to live my life well, neither relying on others nor bullying anyone. But I not only want to live well, I must live better than you. My elder sister cried out in disbelief. Do you know, on the very first day Mother adopted me, she made me remember my current status. She said I am the legitimate daughter, and you are the illegitimate one. I should excel in every way compared to you. I was puzzled, but even if you want to live a better life than me, why place your hopes on Zhao Mingfang? You should be your own master and become the source of your own pride. My elder sister collapsed and crouched in the corner. Mother said that women like us, living in these deep courtyards and grand mansions, can live a smooth and worry-free life by marrying a desirable husband. I was just doing as she said. She hugged her knees and began to cry, weeping so intensely that she became disheveled and her voice grew hoarse. I pushed the door open and went out. She cried for a long time. When she came out, her eyes were swollen like walnuts, and the sky was almost dark. Xie Zhiyun, will it be a white silk or poisoned wine for me? I shook my head. Don't tell me you're planning to set me on fire too. The young Marquis snorted. You're overthinking it. What Zhao Mingfang did has nothing to do with you. Aji said a wife's status shouldn't be the reason for someone to die. The crown prince is benevolent and won't kill you either. You'd better take care of yourself from now on. My legitimate sister's eyes welled up with joy, but within moments, she sighed again, her smile strained and bitter. Someone like me can never return to the Xie family. Drifting alone out in the world with no one to rely on and no means to make a living, how is that any different from being dead? You're skilled in needlework. The rabbits you embroider are so lifelike. You could sell your embroidery. Double-sided embroidery is quite valuable. Didn't your cooking skills improve a lot later? Then you could also work as a cook, and when you have enough money, open a restaurant. You could even farm, weave, or make pottery. In short, you won't starve to death. Hope gradually rekindled in her eyes. Xie Shuyun, the world is vast. You should break free from your shackles and sing triumphantly as you charge through the battle array. Zhao Mingfang said he wanted to see me before he died, but I refused. Some people are better left unseen, lest they dirty your eyes. I only sent the young Marquis to wait in line to buy me the best hibiscus cakes in the entire capital. This lotus seed cake is even more delicious than the one from the main wife's room in my childhood. Since then, a letter has been delivered to the Marquis residence every year on my birthday. There are only 2 words on the letter, shared peace. There was no signature, but I knew who sent it. After giving birth to the child, war broke out again on the frontier, and the young Marquis volunteered to lead the troops. I also went to the northern frontier. I had trained in martial arts under him for many years, and the young Marquis had long said I was ready to graduate. With my hair tied back, armor donned, and long blade in hand, I turned and joined the military camp, fighting side by side with the soldiers. Amid the neighing of war horses and the howling winds, I felt an infinite sense of glory. The end.